Look, we're gonna talk about this grandfather issue that you put in this book right here. If y'all don't get this book, Our Shades of Black History. Now, Nicole didn't write the whole book. She has a chapter in it starting on page 25 to 42. So I'm telling you, I'm just laughing out loud. Just so,
I'm glad. I'm glad. My jokes need to land.
welcome to the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, where we have uncensored conversations, we exchange information, and we have a ton of resources for all the viewers and the listeners of this international podcast. I'm your Fire Medic CEO host, back for another exclusive interview. We got a return guest, one of my VIPs, Miss Anxiety Coach herself. She did an interview with us talking about relationships to relationships. That's right, you heard me. I'm going to say it again. Relationships to relationships. If y'all didn't see and or listen to that interview, please go back and binge it because I'm telling you, it is a banger. I got the anxiety coach herself, Miss Nichol Mills, my East Coast sister. What's going on with you today?
Everything. I'm gonna say everything. I'm gonna say
Everything.
everything. When you speak, oh, nothing is going on. I'm just chilling. That's the energy that you invite. So everything's going
The new book, hold on, let me get a good screenshot of it here.
on.
Our Shades of Black History, Individual Stories from Black Men and Women from Moments in Time, Volume 2, Nichol Mills. You have some other authors that are contributors to this book. We're going to jump into that story. The title of this podcast episode is Surviving Childhood Traumas. This is Nichol Mills. She's a life and anxiety coach, 20 years experience of psychology, and she is a seasoned life coach and a moderator for the online Mendable community. So if you don't have Clubhouse, download the app. You can either do the desktop version or whatever smart device that you like. That Mendable group meets Mondays and Thursdays from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. She specializes in childhood trauma and anxiety, utilizing humor therapy, and you're going to hear us and see us laughing, okay? So don't be tripping. She uses humor therapy as a unique therapeutic approach. Miss Anxiety Coach yourself. I'm reading your chapter on page 25. And
I'm
one
gonna
of
tell you
the
why I'm laughing first because this is the thing. We speak things that's no longer true. Because of my childhood trauma, I believed that I wouldn't be supported. I believed that I was gonna write this book and nobody was gonna read it. And so to my amazement, when you ask for support, you get support.
support.
But we don't give ourselves the chance. We'll just say, I don't have nobody support me. I'm going to cancel the event. Nobody's going to come. You didn't even give yourself a chance. So, to my amazement and my amusement, thank you so much for supporting me.
Anytime. Give us a synopsis of the book because it's not just you that is the sole author. You have three other authors, correct? Tell us about the premise of the book, Our Shades of Black History,
So, it's Our Shades of Black History, Volume 2.
Part
This
2.
was a baby of April Maria Williams and Jump Time Publishing. She
The
wanted to
the
start,
warrior.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
Sister April. Okay, yeah.
Yes. So she wanted to start a collection called Our Shades of Black History, individual stories of moments in time, inspiring stories. But every day we're making Black history because every day we're Black. And so people do remarkable things and extraordinary things, and they're not always recorded or reported. So we collected these stories and we put them in a book together. Her sister is Crystal Williams, and they talked about when her mom died and overcoming grief and the memories. Tamula Blue, her wife is in the first chapter.
Yeah. Then you have
Um,
Jarvis T. Booker.
Jarvis, yes. So Jarvis started how he became an entrepreneur. So all of the stories are different stories that all come together through the common thread of us knowing April Williams. So I think it's a good read, getting to know a little bit about people and how they are more like you.
Hmm.
You can see yourself in each one of these characters. Even if you haven't lost your mom, you can imagine how you would feel, especially if your mom is the glue that holds everybody together. If you ever aspire to be an entrepreneur, you could do that. And then listening to Miss Tamula Blue and all of the things that she incurred to become this wonderful person that she is today.
My beloved grandmother, my maternal grandmother, peace be upon her, eternal soul forevermore, died at the age of 93. One day, literally one day after her 93rd birthday. I had been reflecting on that entirety of those 93 years. I love my grandmother so dear. She helped me in so many ways, more so as an adult than a child. Because I was raised by my mom, her oldest child, and my mom was a single parent because my dad wasn't really in my life. When I got divorced from my ex-wife, the mother of our children, now we got married twice, so when I say that, let me clarify. So my ex-wife is the mother of my children. We got married twice. We met as teenagers. So we got married in 97, divorced in 02, remarried in 04, separated in 09, got divorced in 2013. And then I met Mrs. LP and we got married. I bring up my maternal grandmother because when my ex-wife and I first separated in 01, I let my ex-wife have the house that I had purchased for us. I didn't fight her for it in court. My grandmother owned a two-family flat that was 2 blocks away from where she lived. My uncle lived downstairs. I moved into that upstairs apartment, and I lived there for 17 years, 2002 to 2017. My grandmother just really helped me so much because I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I had just I hadn't even gotten an EMS yet. I got an EMS in '07. So this is 6 years later. You know, between all of the hardships I was going through with the divorce, I really depended on my grandmother to help me deal with a lot of those traumas that I was dealing with. That helped me help the kids deal with their ACEs, their adverse childhood experiences, because now they're children of divorced parents. When we remarried, we were still living in that apartment. When we separated the second time, I was still living in an apartment. She moved out and got a separate place. I had 4 of the 6 kids. It would have been 6, but there was a technicality in that. I'll talk about that at a later time. I think I've talked about it before, but I still lived at that apartment and still had to help our children deal with their adverse childhood experiences that came to be part of the fabric of their lives, my life, our lives. When I think about our shades of our history, our Black history, I think about, man, I never wanted our kids to grow up in a split home. I never wanted our kids to be not products of a divorce, but be the rope in between the tug of war between their mother and myself. So when I look at your book and I look at some of the different chapters from the different authors, I think about some of the things that you wrote in there. And you talked about, as a little girl, your childhood was a blur. That's the first line. You talked about in the second paragraph, and this is where I was laughing when you came on, where you said your maternal grandfather was always full of wisdom and jokes, as well as alcohol and guns. Now, that's funny as hell to me for a number of reasons. Because you know how you and I, we just laugh a whole lot. And I think about the work that I do as a Stop the Bleed instructor, and I think about the work that I do with firearm safety and all that. I don't get into the two-way stuff. It's just safety. So when I think about what your grandfather said, I think about how my maternal grandmother was so instrumental, because you go on to talk about how no matter what you did, he was proud of you. No matter what you experienced in your childhood, in your family, and no matter what traumas that you experienced, he was proud of you. Be it domestic violence related situations. You know, I had to deal with that with my ex-wife. Domestic violence related issues geared towards me, not on the other side. I had to deal with the fallout of the kids having to be forced by her to make accusations of abuse against me, because at the time I was a licensed. Later on, when we got separated the second time, now I'm in EMS. As you know, when you are licensed by the state, be it nursing, medical, therapy, whatever, you're a mandated reporter. So she was attempting to sully my name and assassinate my character by using the kids, because they're not going to come after the kids for false reports. They're going to go after, because they even got to a point where they told her, you make more and more false allegation against Mr. Penton, we're going to come after you. Full disclosure. This is, I'm not telling you what I've heard. This is all, you can go on CaseNet in Missouri and pull up all of this stuff. I say that because when I think of your book and you talk about how you received almost no affection except for when you were a baby. You talked about when you were born, your parents were teenagers. Okay. Again, same thing. You and I didn't realize how many similarities that we have. Again, we were teenagers. When we had our first son, we were teens. You said, I choose not to blame my parents for their ignorance for three important reasons. And you talk about first, children having children are bound to make mistakes. And I thought about that and I was like, man, that's a great way to look at it from that perspective. You talked about, secondly, we are all doing the best we can with what we have. And third, and most importantly, I had grown up in a loving environment where safety and success were first cultivated. The end result would have been would have been grossly modified. Now, I want you, and I'm going to mute my mic because I want to hear you talk about some of these things that I brought up, because I think that as men, and this is another part, not only are you an author and an anxiety coach, you are one of the leadership in this group called Mendable that we'll get into a little later on that I talked about. The mic is yours.
So, first of all, thank you for allowing me on your platform. I appreciate the honor. When kids are having kids, they haven't developed enough. They're not mature enough. So things that they do and should do, the things that I did when I was 17, I don't do that stuff no more. I don't even have the same vocabulary, the same vernacular. I don't hang with the same people. I don't go in the same places. None of the things that I did then are the same as now. So we need to give them a break.
Hmm.
Some things we know right from wrong, and some things we don't realize, hey, this is going to be a problem later.
Yeah.
This is going to show up. This is damaging to a human being. We don't think about that. We might, yell at our kids because our parents yelled at us, or
That's right.
we might beat our kids. We want to instill discipline, right? So that's the first thing. They don't know. Nobody is given a blueprint when you leave the hospital. They give you the little striped hat and the striped blanket, and that's it. And get on out of here with your baby. No instruction manual. Nobody tells you how to do it. Nobody tells you what the budget is going to be. Nobody tells you about all the unforeseen contingencies that can happen. So they just doing the best they can. The second thing is what I have learned by studying childhood trauma and anxiety is that people have survival mechanisms. They have survival tools. And so, in my protecting of myself, it may cause some hurt to you. I'm going to give you an example. When I feel unsafe or I feel that somebody is infringing on my boundaries, I'll create a boundary. And in my boundary, I'll create distance. We may not talk. You may not have access to my phone, anything like that, right? But
Oh,
you feel hurt. You say, well, what happened to Nicole? Nicole is staying away from me. Nicole's trying to protect herself. And sometimes, not every time, but sometimes I'm protecting myself from everybody. And I just need peace and I need time with God from everybody. It may not be anything that you did, it may be something that somebody else did. And I just don't want to talk to nobody. And then once I get the words together and once I've had enough solitude, because I am an advocate for solitude for everybody. We follow people on social media. We follow the rhetoric. We don't even look and see if things are true. We start all of our comments with I heard and they said. We don't do the research. So sometimes you need to sit back and think, what does my intuition tell me? What does my better course of judgment say to me? So there's that. Now, when I say the difference would be grossly modified, I was reading, I do a Bible study every morning on Clubhouse, Monday through Thursday. And I was talking about Samson. Now, the only thing that people really talk about with Samson is that Delilah got his hair cut. He messing around with that chick and she got his hair cut. That's not everything. So I learned this lesson a couple of years ago. He wasn't supposed to get drunk. He wasn't supposed to touch a dead thing, and he wasn't supposed to cut his hair. By the time his hair was cut, he already did the other two. He was already getting drunk. He ate out of a dead lion. Some bees made honey. He ate the honey out of the dead lion and then had a riddle. It was like, guess what I got? And guess where I got it from? So he was cocky. He was arrogant. He was prideful. All of this because his mother was a barren woman. And so they promised her that you're gonna have a son. So when you have a child that you've been trying to get pregnant on your own, it hasn't worked, and now you finally got a baby. Oh my gosh. And you put your baby up on this pedestal. And so what happens is you cultivate an asshole. That's what happens. You cultivate someone who is selfish, who doesn't have any respect for authority, who doesn't have any accountability, who thinks that they can live by their own appetite. They can gamble, they can spend money, they can do whatever they want to do with no consequences. Why? Because there were no consequences in childhood. Consequences aren't always a bad thing. There's a cause and there's an effect. And when things are caused, it affects this. If you spend the rent money, you're going to be homeless. That's how it works.
Look, I almost got triggered. Okay. Because I'm telling you right now, it's almost too much like right when you say that. I call it intentional ignorance. Here's what I mean by that. Dr. King said famously, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, the most dangerous thing in the world is sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. I add another word to that. I say sincere intentional ignorance. And you heard me say this in Clubhouse where I was talking about intentional ignorance. We know that we don't know everything. I don't care if you're on the IQ Genius Level Association. Nobody knows everything. It's okay to not know everything. Once you've been made aware that you don't know a particular thing or set of things that you need to know, the onus is on you to learn what that is or those things are. And if you don't and it becomes problematic, you don't have nobody else to blame. That's on you, dog. Okay? That's intentional ignorance. Like you said, you know damn well you signed up on this lease that charges you X amount of dollars per month and you ain't paying your rent. Well, don't be surprised when you get an eviction notice. Don't be surprised when you get evicted. Don't be surprised when you got a dumpster dive for your stuff. That's right. I said it. I'll say it again. Don't be surprised if you're living the life of somebody unhoused because you just refuse. Not that it's not a skill issue. It's a will issue. You making the money to pay for it and you don't pay for it? That's intentionally ignorant. How in the world do you think somebody's going to allow you to stay in their dwelling, house, apartment, townhome, whatever it is? I want to ask you specifically, since we're talking about surviving childhood traumas like that, because we on the Trigger Want to Talk podcast, if you're triggered at any point during this podcast, and you need help immediately, call 911. If you don't need immediate help, we want you to call 988. That's the Suicide and Crisis Hotline. It's available toll-free 24/7 here in the States. If you're listening and or watching this podcast, because we're streaming on every platform, and you can watch the interviews on Spotify and our company's YouTube channel. If you're listening or watching this podcast anywhere else in the world, call your local emergency number for help. Now, we deal with true crime, human and sex trafficking, domestic violence, sexually based offenses. We end every episode with a missing person case. I want you, Miss Anxiety Coach, to talk about how childhood traumas are correlated with those 5 areas. Let's start with human and sex trafficking, because we know that's been in the news a whole lot lately. When you're talking about the person that occupies the White House, when you're talking about the person who, quote unquote, took their own life, Jeffrey Epstein in jail. Whether you're talking about his co-conspirator who just got moved to a minimum security federal penitentiary. Whether you're talking about stuff that happens here, because most people think trafficking happens still primarily somebody being put in a shipping container coming across the pond or being put in a people mover going across the U.S.-Mexico border. Trafficking happens all the time, every day, all day, and twice on Sunday. How do you, as a counselor, a therapist, a mental health professional, deal with human and sex trafficking with children?
I personally believe that the onus is on the parents So many people are caught up in a selfie generation, being selfish, that they're thinking about what I want. I have a relationship finally, so my daughter falls to the wayside. I
Mhm.
finally have somebody that's showing an interest in me, so I neglect my son. And so what happens is we have to pay attention to what they're doing, where they're going, who their friends are, and we have to instill certain lessons to them. I have over the ear headphones.
Mhm.
Most of the kids wear earpods. So
Yeah.
you tell them, take one of them out. Or if you have over the ear, take one of them off your ear so that you can be aware of what's going on. Pay attention to footsteps. When my daughter was little, it might sound crazy. I don't know. Judge me if y'all want to. When my daughter was little, we would do drill. When my son is older. My son is 26 and my
Okay.
daughter is 12. But when she was younger, we would do these drills where my son would pick her up over his shoulder and just try to run with her. And I told her, keep moving your arms, keep kicking, keep fighting, keep doing whatever you do. Now I know nobody else is doing that. I understand. But because I'm an anxiety coach and I specialize in childhood trauma, you have no idea how many people I've talked to that have been violated sexually as a kid or as an adult. So if I can prevent at least one, especially in my own house, I will. That's a primary reason that I choose not to date at this time. Not serious dating. I'll go out and get something to eat, but serious courtship, not at this time.
I'm glad that you say that because I just saw, and I've seen a number of these because of the work that we do in covering human and sex trafficking. One of the people that we work with is internationally known and recognized. Her name is Rasha Hamad. She worked for the UN. Her parents used to work for the UN. Her organization, she's the CEO and founder of Youth Underground. We've done 2 interviews where we're going to do a part 3, deep diving more into some of the stuff. Now, let me give a disclaimer because when I say deep dive, we're not investigative journalists. Okay, anything that we talk about can be found just doing some regular old research, whatever format. And we're not talking about stuff to get people arrested, get people convicted. And, I know that sometimes people want to cross that line and it can put people in danger because we know there's some powerful people. Let me just say this. People don't do redactions for just the hell of it, just because today is Tuesday. Okay? When you see something being redacted, there's a reason for that. So be very careful, my fellow podcasters, when you're going and talking about some of these conversations. Okay, that's all. I'm gonna leave it at that. The thing that I saw recently, it was showing they would set up a scenario where a little kid was walking down just a busy, crowded street, and some guy would walk up to them, grab the kid, and run into like a building that was adjacent to the sidewalk to see if anybody what their reaction would be. A lot of people would just keep walking. Some people would kind of turn their head and keep walking. There were a few people that stopped dead in their tracks. There were a few people that took their phone and like pointed it towards the doorway. There was a couple of guys that actually grabbed the guy, ran in there, grabbed the kid, brought the kid back out. When you say that you train him to and your daughter to move and wiggle and scream and flail, I'm like, man, you don't really hear any. I've never heard anybody say that.
That's why I say
I've
don't judge me.
never
I'm
ever,
crazy.
I've never ever heard anybody say that. People do the hand signal. I've never heard anybody say what you just said. Why did you specifically have her do that?
Because one time I took my car to the dealership, and that's what trauma is. Trauma is a bad experience that you remember over and over again and replays in your mind. So one time I was at the dealership and she was 3 years old, and the man told me to move my car. And I said, okay, let me move it, but let me see what this charge is. He said, I need you to move your car right now. I said, I'm getting ready to move it. Let me just see what this charge is. So when I went to the counter, he pulled my car through to let the other cars get through. He wasn't going anywhere. He just was moving the line because I was holding up the line. And
Okay.
so my daughter was 3 years old. She was in the back seat. She didn't scream. She didn't do anything. And so as children, they are very, very vulnerable. And if they've been sexually assaulted or just had some misappropriated sexual contact at least one time, it may follow them for the rest of their life. They may be more prone to promiscuity. They may be more prone to prostitution, more prone to human sex trafficking, anything, if this is what they've seen, what they've experienced, or if this is what they've been exposed to.
I want you to jump to the next thing that we cover, which is domestic violence. How do you define it? Because I have a broader, my definition of it, just like if you look up any word or words in the dictionary, there's always three, four, or multiple meanings for that word or those words. Most people think when it comes to domestic violence, it's violence that happens in your domesticated place of residence, underneath your roof and between your four walls. I've added to that based on a lot of research, a lot of stories that I've seen as a first responder, even though I'm retired, as somebody who is focusing more and more on these true crime issues. I say that domestic violence happens wherever you domesticated yourself. It could be at your residence, it could be at a workplace. We know we spend a lot of, those of us that work, spend a lot of time in our 24 hours at work. You make that place, especially if it's something where you have a desk and not something that you're just doing virtually at home. You have a desk, you have a cubicle, you have some type of office space, you have lockers, you have all of these things. What do most people do? Like, look at where in my office, I got some of my fire EMS stuff in there, in here. I got stuff on the walls and all that stuff. Now, I work from home sometimes. Most of my work is out in the field. But I remember going to work sites and having some of these knickknacks and woodknocks and all these things in my workplace. And domestic violence happens in places where you feel safe and domesticated, where you have personal items. People come into your work spot and they commit these acts of violence, whether it's intimate partner violence that happens in these workplaces, whether it's academic institutions, houses of worship. So we cover all of those things. For you, how do you define domestic violence outside of the normal under your roof in between your four walls? How expansive is it for you?
For me, it's anyone who you already know. That's what I believe. Anybody that you already know that's attacking you. It could be at the pool, it could be at the lake. The where it happens is not the focus for me. It's how do you know this person? If it's a random stranger, fine. But if
That's
it's
different.
somebody that you already know, that could be a partner, it could be a brother, sister, it could be a parent, child, a cousin, grandparent. It could be any one of those things. So the relationship, I believe, is what is more important than the where.
Okay. So it has to be some relationship. And Mrs. LP actually co signed on that because we were talking about this recently. For children of DV, how do you deal with helping them overcome it, deal with it, manage
I don't work with children, but with my daughter, that is my first priority. And I just tell her, what's normal and what's not normal. It's not normal to get beat on every day. It's
it?
not
Okay.
normal to see me using drugs every day. It's not normal to see me cussing out the police. It's certain things are just not normal. And so other people, because it's something that they see on a frequent basis. I heard in Clubhouse this morning, a mother and son attacked a school bus driver.
Wow.
That's not something normal that people do. It was done, but that's not a normal occurrence where me and my kids just get together and we just go assault people. That's not a normal thing. So just helping her identify. And so everything with my daughter and my son, I showed to them as a lesson. This is what we do, this is what we don't do. Even going back to the misappropriation of funds and becoming a victim.
Mhm.
I teach them about financial literacy. I found a very good resource. It's called Next Generation Personal Finance, ngpr.org. And it has a lot of lessons on wealth building, wealth preservation, budgeting, credit, debt, all of these things. But it also has an arcade full of personal finance games that I personally find fun. So I have my daughter doing them. There's one where you're an Uber driver and you have to make $1,000 to pay your rent. There's another one where you're a loan shark and you have to sell people loans with inflated interest rates and long monthly terms. So 360 months or something like that. It shows you to read the fine print and different things like that. So My daughter goes to school because I have to go to work, but I'm her teacher. I teach her stuff all the time. There are workbooks that we do, there are life lessons. If there's a mistake that happens, if something good happens, I show her how to look for deals. Everything that we do in life for my daughter and for my son is a lesson. He's 26, he's still learning lessons.
NGPR, Next Gen Personal Finance. So for those that are going to watch this interview, I got the website on the screen and they have
Mhm.
so many different bits of information, how to start the school year off right, resources to support your return to the classroom. You know, that's very important because when we talk about kids and this is a new school year, the 2025-2026 school year, I want to bring that up because that plays a part in childhood traumas too.
Mhm.
My nephew, who is biologically my ex-wife's nephew, he just moved in with us last October, or actually on Halloween. His situation qualified him for the McKinney-Vento Act. If you don't know what that is, please look it up. The McKinney-Vento Act is for people, especially students and young folks who are homeless or unhoused, to be able to not only get in school, get access to resources and different things like that. And he was dealing with a lot of childhood traumas in the home environments that he lived in. As a young person who you are talking about your children and how you taught them financial literacy, you give them access to these websites and these nonprofit organizations. How does that, in terms of financing, what specifically do you tell them about money? Because this website, this ngfp.org, talks about things like cryptocurrency. What do
Go
you
to the
say to them?
arcade.
Yeah,
See the
I have
arcade at the
arcade
top?
on this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I tell my daughter that I know that money is a tool, and it shows you that you have more choice in life. A lot of times our mental health is attacked or in danger because we feel like we're out of options. And a lot of that comes from not having enough money. If you're in a DV relationship, whether it's mother, father, romantic, brother, sister, whatever it is, if you don't feel like you have choices, you don't have anything to bring to the table, how are you going to survive? So you stay in this situation because you don't see leaving as an option. How are you going to make it? How are you going to feed yourself? How are you going to clothe yourself? Where are you going to stay when it gets cold? So you put up with things that you wouldn't necessarily put up with because you don't have any backup plan. So I teach my daughter about entrepreneurship. I teach her about debt and bills. But these games here are a great resource because she was playing a game. I can't remember which game she was playing, but she was going to college. I think it's Spent. Spent was the one. And it
spent.
showed how she kept running out of money. She was doing all of this and bad stuff. She got a flat tire. And she got fired from her job because the person wanted to talk to her about unionizing. And then her kid was sick, and then she had to go to a birthday party for the kid. And it was just all these different games that was getting her the message on her level that I like. Now, I will say this for me because I'm an avid game player. These games are for everybody. I used to
Okay.
be a financial literacy mentor, and the key problem where we would stay was budgeting. People couldn't separate their needs from their wants. And so they felt like they needed everything. And so if you have a parent that is misappropriating funds, that's what you learn. You're in a learned environment. So you'll hear people that'll use a cop out 100% of the time. Well, nobody ever taught me. My dad wasn't around, so nobody ever taught me how to be a father. Okay, well, you just be the father that you wish you had. How about that? How about you start with that? And so sometimes your presence is the greatest gift that you can give to your kids. So when I'm around my daughter and my son and any little kids that will listen, I always try to give them some kind of message, some kind of tip or tool or something that can help them. So I think it's critical. It's critical.
I want to jump to the next thing that we deal with, which is sexually based offenses. Again, this is the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, and we are talking about surviving childhood traumas with anxiety coach Nichol Mills. How do you deal with sexual based offenses when it comes to young folks? Because in the book that you wrote, Our Shades of Black History, Individual Stories from Black Men and Women in Moments in Time, Volume 2, I know that when we deal with sexual based offenses, whether it comes from in the home or outside of the home, we talked about that somewhat earlier when we were talking about trafficking. Everybody has a different view of how they deal with sexual based offenses. As a professional and as a mom, what are some of the things that you said to your son? What are some of the things that you said to your daughter? And I'm saying that as individuals where you had a one-on-one with each one of them individually. And what, if any, did you say to them as a group? You, her, and she.
So, uh, to that same vein, I do believe that when you have multiple kids, you owe it to yourself to do things as a group, but had to have individual time with this one, have individual time with that one. And so, what I told both of them, I really believe, and this is just me, I could be weird. Don't be obnoxious. That was my simple little tip. Don't be obnoxious and don't let anybody be obnoxious with you. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that's being loud, that's trying too hard, that's being forceful, that is, pushing yourself in a situation that you may not be welcomed in. You may not be invited into every circle. And so when you do that, when you're screaming for attention, then people will see that. They will notice that. It'll be certain things you do. So I tell my son and tell my daughter, hold your head up. Walk like somebody cares about you. Go out in this world and represent your family, represent your mother, represent you well, represent all of us well. And so, one of the things that I do when I talk to people that are victims of not just DV, but sexual assault, that's my biggest client base.
Okay.
I, I have to rebuild their confidence and let them know you are more than that. You know how many times, and my daughter's 12 years old, how many times I take her out and people say, wow, you're so beautiful. Or, wow, you're so beautiful. I thought you were 17 and she's only 12. And so I tell her that you're beautiful, but you're also intelligent, you're funny, you're smart, you're kind. Because if you're in a situation where you don't hear that, you'll lulled into this false sense of security by a person who's just going to misuse their power.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make sure that she knows that she understands that she has a responsibility and that people aren't just entitled to do and say whatever they want. They're not entitled to touch you. Let me know what's going on. And so we have an open relationship, even with my son, and he's 26. I know who their friends are. I know who their friends' parents are. I know what the conversations are about. I might not know everything, like every single solitary thing, but I
Mm-hmm.
have a good awareness. And then we have the transparency where you can come and tell me, and it's free of consequence. What happened? What did you do? And then what happened? And then what did he say? And then what did she say? So I want to know like what's going on. My son, he knows that women are the weaker vessel, not meaning that they're less than a man or whatever, but you can grab a woman's wrist and you might break it by you don't even mean to, but you're just stronger. So just telling him just to be gentle, just to be careful. He already knows if somebody says no, that's it. Because I taught them not to be obnoxious. If someone doesn't want your attention, that's fine. Go find somebody that does. But you don't force yourself on anybody during any situation. So with my kids, I try to build them, and with my clients, I rebuild them.
In your book, you talked about, let me pull it back up here. You talked about your grandfather. This is, I want to jump into the next thing that we cover, which is the true crime.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
My maternal grandfather was always full of wisdom and jokes as well as alcohol and guns. I think that's where my family gets a sense of humor and its addictions. No matter what I did, he was always proud of me. He died of mouth cancer when I was 38. I greatly appreciated him as I grew up because he was my only living grandparent. The reason I want to throw that into the true crime thing is because I think of people in my family, the men that were in my family, who had some thug life about themselves. Now, they weren't criminals. Some of them were, full disclosure, some of them were. Hey, some of them had criminal records and stuff. When you wrote that, and because that's in the second paragraph, educate us on dear old Pop Pop.
So my grandfather, he was an alcoholic. I love my grandfather. Now, I don't know what his life was like as a kid. I never asked him. I wish I would have, but I wasn't doing anxiety coaching then.
Okay,
But I wish I asked him about his childhood. But what I know about addictions is that it's something that haunts you when you're awake, so you try
absolutely.
to suppress it, and then it comes up when you're asleep, and so you don't go to sleep. And so people struggle and battle with insomnia. So they use drugs to numb their waking hours. And so my grandfather had an affair with a woman while he was in the military. And her husband came home early and he shot and killed him and was released from the military. So as a result, he always had that man's face haunting him all the days of his life. Kind of like in the movie Ray, where he was haunted by his little brother drowning
Yeah.
all the days of his life. So my grandfather always had that, so he would drink to suppress it. And so he was so funny. I remember one time I went to go see my grandfather in the nursing home, and they were down in the cafeteria eating.
Now,
And I
where did he grow up?
He grew up in Northeast DC.
Okay,
My whole family is from DC.
DC. Okay.
So he was in the nursing home and the food was ending. And they said, okay, we got one elevator. So y'all need to get in the line. So it's a line of all these wheelchairs waiting to go upstairs. My grandfather was either at the end or at the middle, close to the end. Do you know this dude picked up his wheelchair and ran to the front of the line and said, "My show about to come on." That was hilarious. And then when he got to when he after he picked up his wheelchair and ran up to the front, he sat in the wheelchair like this.
See, that's why I look. That's why y'all gotta watch these interviews because you ain't gonna see that if you listening. Now we love our listeners. I'm just saying, y'all gotta watch these interviews. Look, we're gonna wrap this thing up because I know you gotta run. I want to talk about one of the things that you wrote in this book because I got these little post-it markers and I got them all through here. Here's another one. Okay, so I ain't just talking to talk. I'm walking the walk. This is on page 27. Some people choose to operate as victims and blame others for what they don't currently have. Failing to meet obligations or what's missing from childhood, our choices can reflect taking the hand we were dealt or choosing to reshuffle. I choose the latter rather than the former. A victim mindset allows you to be exonerated from all liability and responsibility for actions and choices, even inaction. In other words, you get a pass for quote unquote dropping the ball. In the victim mentality, we apply reasons, excuses, justifications, and explanations for why success didn't happen. Victims assign the burden to someone else so the problem doesn't have to be fixed, in some cases addressed or even acknowledged. When we realize our power to change our own circumstances, nothing and no one can stop us from winning. All we do is win, 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 no matter what. We stack wins. We came up with this hashtag that we use all the time. We didn't create it, but we use it. Mrs. LP and I. We stack wins. When I read that paragraph, I almost got emotional. That's why I paused for a second. Talk to me about that.
So when you have an excuse, and I use this scenario all the time, when you have an excuse, people say, "Oh, okay, don't worry about it." That's what they say. They really say that. They really say, "Oh, okay, don't worry about it." But you can ask my son. It was no excuse that was good enough. If I said do the dishes, if you said I had homework, I had to stay after for practice, I still have to cook, so them dishes need to get done. So, Okay, you had practice. I hope you did good. Did you run laps? Did you have to do burpees? Okay, get in there and take care of them dishes. And so what happens is I didn't have a father. I don't have an education. Um, my grandmother raised me. My mother was on drugs. I never met my father. My mother doesn't know who my father is. I was born out of rape. I was born out of adultery. My house burned down when I was 3, and I had to go live in foster care for the past 16 years. People think that because of those things happen, even though they're bad things that happen. However, and so that's why I'm not the coach for everybody because I'm going to however you. I'm going to be like, oh, poor baby, cry on my shoulder. Go ahead.
No, that's me. Because no, you go ahead and finish your thought. Because you just, I'm telling you, that's that similar relationship. Go ahead and finish. I'm gonna tell you
I'm
where.
a, I'm a, I'm a cry. I'm a allow you to cry on my shoulder and I'll coddle you. But just know we're going to have a plan at the end of this conversation. We're going to have to move forward because you can't just, why are you sitting on the couch at 3:30 in the afternoon? Well, my mother wasn't here, or I was the youngest, and they never let me have no responsibility. All my brothers and sisters did it. Nobody ever taught me. Nobody ever showed me how to be a father. So I don't know how to do it. My baby mother, she got too much mouth. My baby father, he out in them streets or whatever it is. Why are you stripping instead of going to school? Where the money is easy and fast. There's a lot of other easy and fast money that you can do. One of them is called binary options. I get all those little scam DMs all the time. It's so many different things that you can do, but when people have a reason, an explanation, an excuse, or justification. You know what, LP, I'm running late.
No,
So what had happened was, I know you told me to come here at 2 o'clock, but when I went outside, my check card and my debit card, the way my account is set up, people will be like, oh, okay. Well, don't worry about it. No, no, we have to be accountable. And so, whatever the circumstances are, I heard you, and that's a good excuse. Even if you say, you know what, my mother died, or my mother got in a car accident and she was my ride. I'm so sorry, but I still need you to be here because that burden falls on somebody else.
that's right. I was laughing because I say the same thing. Very similar to you. When I was years ago, when I was working in the for a nonprofit in the public health department, I was working with men who were fathers, stepfathers, and inspector fathers, 16 and 25, and the program was called Mentor Dad. And I would help them in all aspects of fatherhood, even if it was teaching them how to deal with a diaper change or a diaper rash, all the way to getting resources and stuff. And we would sit around at the table and we would talk about things that, hey, what's your reason for not being a part of your child's life? And I would get all kind of stuff. Oh, I wouldn't raise by my dad. And I'd be like, hey, I wouldn't raise by my dad. Next. Oh, we live in the projects. I'm like, dude, I live right down the street in the same projects that you live in. Next. Hey, but I'm right there. And it was like, shoot it down next, shoot it down next. But then you bring the love at the end. And it's like, okay, let's eliminate all this stuff, not forget it, because you weren't born in and of yourself. Most of us were born into poverty. Most of us were born into low income situations. So it's about, hey, let's recognize the cards that we're dealt. You still got to play the game.
Hmm.
You still got to play the game. You still got to deal with the cards you dealt. Okay. So I want to put a pin in that because we're going to have to talk about that later. On the screen here, we got the Mendable, and it's mendable.app, MENDALBLE.app. And I got the whole team on here, including you. Talk about Mendable before we wrap this thing up.
I love Mendable. Mendable offers peer support. And so we have guests that are frequent guests, we have one-time guests, we have guests that we help to, you know, get back on their feet emotionally. And then they come back and they visit us here and there. But it offers peer support. And Mendable is a wellness app. We love to be able to support people. And so how it started on Clubhouse. And what happens is a person shares for 3 minutes and then they get poured into for from various people for about 30 seconds. On Mondays it's Men's Day, on Thursdays it's women, or however you identify. If you feel like you need to share, then you share on a Men's Day or you share on a Women's Day. It just if you need something to get off your chest, we hold space and we listen to everything that you have to say. Now, the app is working with the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is the nerve that runs through your whole body and is connected to your anxiety levels. Once you start to experience anxiety, your vagus nerve can be vibrated. If you hum, if you
Hum.
start laughing, if you
Yes.
start dancing. And how do you know your anxiety is reduced? I always start laughing at this when you start yawning, because yawning is relaxation. We always learn about fight or flight,
Hmm.
but there's also rest and digest.
That's
And
right.
so when you're resting and you're sleepy, and the feeling that you get when you go to the bathroom and you're like, ah, that can't coexist with anxiety. So if you're stressed out, tell yourself internally, I'm safe, I'm calm, and I'm safe. Once you start to breathe in, hold, and breathe out, that's called diaphragmatic breathing.
Hmm.
You breathe in, hold it for a few seconds, slowly exhale. As you do that, maybe about 3 or 4 revolutions, then you'll start to yawn. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, it really worked. I can't believe this. And so what happens is your body is kind of like a firefighter, where to show up and it just starts spraying everything. You're like, hold up. We don't need a full blast right now. We don't even need no water. I know him. It's fine. Oh, I thought I had to do something.
Hmm.
I'm here to protect you. I thought I had to do something. So you tell your body, I'm safe. As you tell your body, you're safe, you start to reduce that anxiety. Your internal security guard, your internal firefighter doesn't have to protect you. And once you start to have that internal dialogue over and over again, don't just succumb to anxiety. So when we were talking about victim, people talk to me and they say, well, I can't do this because I have anxiety. And so my question is, what have you discovered about anxiety? Have you done any educational research at all? Because if somebody diagnoses me with something, I want to know what the symptoms are, what are the effects, what are the precursors, what brings it on, how do you resolve it? Do I need to be medicated? What's going on now? I don't prescribe medicine because it's it doesn't necessarily need medication, and there are some extreme cases, there are some anomalies, but every situation is not an anomaly. Every situation doesn't uh, require medication. More situations than not require just breathing, just to breathe. Look and see what are the things that start your anxiety. Me, my anxiety comes up when I see people not following the rules. When I see somebody with a home air conditioner in their car, I'm saying, what are we doing? When you making my food and you got latex gloves and your fingernails are poked through and you got them like you about to be at the gym, you're not about to make my food with that, are you? That's not following the rules and it makes me so nervous. I get so nervous. When I see a woman and she busts out laughing, she got lipstick on and she busts out laughing and don't have no front teeth, I'm saying, when did you when did you decide to give up on life? You just don't care, but you just bought the lipstick, huh? That's not following the rules. You get your teeth done before you get your lipstick. That's not following the rules. So for me, for me, when people don't line the public toilet seat, even though I'm not in there, that is not following the rules. When people have snot in their nose, they nostrils, and they just blow the snot out with no tissue, ooh, that's not following the rules. It makes me nervous. It makes me nervous because I'm saying, well, what else will you do? So I need protection. That's just me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
This is why, in part, that I just love you to life. Because you always have me in tears laughing. I'm
I love
telling
you
you,
too.
I don't know why you don't do stand up. I really,
I
really.
did. I
No, I'm
did. I
talking
did
about
do
like for
stand up.
real, like just like forget all this other stuff that you're doing. Okay, like, I'm just
I did stand up. I did stand up. And I found that going back to excuses, there's always a way to do what you want to do. So I integrated comedy into coaching because that's what I like to do. I like both of them and I couldn't decide. But I have made it a priority to embrace more and more and more comedy.
humor therapy, as you call it. Look, we're
Hmm.
gonna put a pin in it right there. I want to put on the screen your Amazon page where people can buy this book. I'm telling you, it is a great, great, great resource, and it is such a wonderful book. I haven't even deep dove into all the other chapters. I always want to start with yours, but I want to start from the beginning, cover to cover, and tell us about where else they can buy the book. Is it just on Amazon, or can they get it on your?
It's just on Amazon. I need to add it to my website. I haven't done that yet. My website, I'm gonna add some more interactive things. It's gonna have more blogs. I'm trying to look for a way to use gamification in anxiety coaching. I was
Mm,
doing that for a while in the metaverse, but
yeah,
my contact for the metaverse kind of like went away, so I don't do it as much, but I play games a lot. And so I know that everybody has a different form of learning. You could be an auditory, visual, kinesthetic, but games allow you to relax instead of putting so much pressure on. Wait, let me get the notes. What did you say? Say that again. Wait a minute. But if you're in a relaxed state, you're more likely to absorb the information. That has been my experience.
folks, the book is called Our Shades of Black History, Volume 2, Individual Stories from Black Men and Women from Moments in Time, available in paperback by author, anxiety coach Nichol Mills, co-authored by Crystal Dionne Williams, Jarvis T. Booker, and
Tamula
Tamula
Blue.
Blue. This book has every story. She says every story is essential in attempts to remove and rewrite history. We are at a time when some legislative bodies have taken a position of book banning. It seems books centered around Black history, Black thoughts, and Black authors raise the indignation of members of our society. Our Shades of Black History are stories from Black men and women who felt it necessary to leave the world with a piece of their story. Follow each author as they journey through self discovery, evolution, and triumph. Each story is unique and filled with purpose. And again, the table contents are moments in time that will never be forgotten by Crystal Dionne Williams. Infinite Potential by Jarvis T. Booker. Nicole has her contents listed. Number 3, My Superpower, Childhood Trauma is My Superpower. And then when I got the news by Tamula Blue, I want you to all go to her Amazon page, put it in your cart, buy it. Make sure that you leave a review. I got to leave my review tonight. 4 words minimum because that feeds into the algorithm. I'll put the link to her Amazon page as well as the link to her website, which is anxietycoach.net, and the Mendable.app link, all in the show notes for this episode when it airs. Any parting words?
I would just say breathe. Every anxiety or panic attack isn't always that. Just breathe. Tell your body you're safe and breathe. And if you have anxiety, don't live with anxiety. Don't let anxiety have you. You don't have to do that. You can learn a little bit more about anxiety. We can talk about it. I'm thinking about organizing a group. I've been taking a break, but I need some more coaching hours so I can get another certification. So I'm thinking about starting an anxiety group. And later on, after I graduate, I can't take it on right now. I want to do a retreat where we
Excellent.
just come together, we share our stories, our traumas, we laugh, and then we come up with a solution and we bebop on out of there.
Look, I'll be in DC also in October. the 22nd through the 24th, teaching the Stop the Bleed class. I believe Mrs. LP is going to join me there. Mrs. LP and I will be in Atlanta on October 11th for the Menable Conference. We're going to see you there. I'm going to bring my book. I want to give you, and you're going to give me, and we're going to give each other a big bear hug. Okay?
Yes.
I hope that we can link up in DC a couple of weeks after that. And I'm telling you, I am just so honored to call you my friend and my sister. So we're going to go ahead and close this out.
Here. The
We're going
same.
to close
I
this out.
love you.
We got stuff to do. I got to run and teach the CPR class because somebody called me and they was like, hey, can you do this? I'm like, sure, no problem, whatever. So in closing, and we're going to always end with a missing person case, so I'll add that to this podcast. But in closing, live in awareness, never live in fear. Make sure you take a CPR, Stop the Bleed, some type of first aid class. Violence happens everywhere. It's not a matter of if, but when and where an emergency is going to happen. Mental health crisis is the world's oldest continuous pandemic that's been around since the beginning of mankind and ain't going nowhere. Deal with the stigmas, the taboos, and the stereotypes. Men, get your shit together. We talked about relationships and relationships. Menable is about that. Not all, but a whole lot of it is. As Nicole's shirt says, be kind to yourself and other people. I don't want you to be part of the next breaking news story that I get on some violent critical incident because you chose not to be kind to yourself or somebody else.
Hi, it's Maria Bray. The Department of Public Safety and the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office has launched a new TIP program. There are several individuals across the state who have gone missing and murdered, and police are trying to figure out what happened to them. So with this TIP line, you could get up to $10,000 for submitting some information. You can do it anonymously that can help further their cases. And also, if you have an MMIR license plate that has this image on it, you're supporting this cause. If you want to get one, you will be helped supporting it as well. And we talked to some emotional families who just want justice for their loved ones.
I have prayed every day for some resolution, some way to ease that pain of not knowing. If you know anything about the disappearance of our daughter, please come forward.
For Anxiety Coach Nichol Mills, LP out.